Darkness, a sound that passes through walls, chests, and bone. Millions of tons of rock shearing loose in the night. 1 minute. That is all it takes for a quarter of a mountain to reach the sea. 5,000 people die before the echo fades. 30 minutes later, 5,000 more die on the opposite shore. People who never felt the earthquake, never saw the mountain fall, never received a single warning. Then, the wave turns around. Here is how the shape of a bay turned the ocean into a weapon and killed a city twice in a single night. Shimabara Peninsula, southern Japan. The western rim of Ariake Bay, an inland sea roughly 12 miles across, walled by land on 3 sides. Drop a boulder into the open ocean, and the energy radiates outward, weakens, vanishes. Drop a mountain into a bathtub, and the energy has nowhere to go. It hits the far wall. It comes back. That is what happened on May 21st, 1792. 15,000 people paid for the geometry. For 4,000 years, Mount Mayuyama stood above Shimabara. From the outside, solid, permanent, a tree-covered peak that no one questioned. From the inside, a shell. Picture a wooden beam eaten hollow by termites. The surface looks fine. The structure is dust. For centuries, boiling acidic groundwater had been eating the mountain from within, dissolving solid rock and turning it to soft clay, one layer at a time. Nobody knew. The concept of a mountain rotting from inside did not exist in any science on Earth in 1792. Mayuyama was already dead. It was waiting for a push. The push had been building for 6 months. In November 1791, the ground began shaking. Not once, not twice. Hundreds of small earthquakes. In February, a neighboring peak, Fugendake, 2 miles northwest, erupted. Lava flowed slowly toward the fields. Predictable, visible. The local Matsudaira clan commissioned detailed maps. They were watching the wrong mountain. 1 month before the collapse, a section of Mayuyama's southeast flank broke free and slid into the sea. The same mountain, the same side. Fishing boats in the bay felt the swell. No orders were issued. No investigation launched. By mid-May, the lava had cooled. The shaking eased. Families who had spent weeks sleeping in the hills came home. 6 months of trembling ground had trained an entire population to normalize the abnormal. Under Tokugawa feudal law, a peasant was bound to the land. There was no mechanism for mass evacuation and every incentive to stay. By the evening of May 21st, the city was back in its beds. 2 foreshocks. Then, at 8 o'clock, a magnitude 6.4 earthquake struck directly beneath Mayuyama. On a global scale, 6.4 is not a civilization-ending event. But when a 6.4 hits a mountain that has been hollowed out over 4 millennia, it does not need to be great. It needs to be enough. The dome sheared along its rotted core. 340 million cubic yards of rock, enough to bury all of Lower Manhattan 40 feet deep, detached from the flank and accelerated downhill at 224 miles per hour, faster than a Category 5 hurricane. 100-foot thick wall of debris covering 3 miles from summit to sea in under 60 seconds. Shimabara was not across the valley, it was directly below. The southern half of the castle town ceased to exist. The survivors heard what the locals would later call naridoshi, a piercing metallic ring that drilled straight through the skull, the sound of a mountain grinding itself to powder in the dark. The debris hit the water. At the point of impact, the wave spiked to 330 feet, taller than the Statue of Liberty. The energy rolled east across 12 miles of shallow bay toward the Higo coast. In Higo, it was a quiet night. No earthquake had been felt on that side. No eruption visible. 20 miles of dark water separated them from Shimabara. The only warning was a sound, a deep, growing roar off the bay. And by the time it was audible, there were seconds left. In the village of Kojima-machi, one local official looked out at the water and saw something wrong. He ran house to house in the dark, screaming at the elderly and children to get uphill. Most did not move. At Cape Osakibana, the seafloor focused the incoming energy like a lens. The water rose 187 feet, taller than Niagara Falls, and swept across the flat Kumamoto plain with nothing to stop it. No hills, no seawalls, no elevation at all. Nearly 5,000 dead on a coast that had nothing to do with the mountain that killed them. Now, the physics of the bay takes over. Ariake Bay is not the ocean. It is a shallow, enclosed basin with rigid coastlines. The flat Kumamoto shore acts like a wall. The kinetic energy does not scatter, it reflects. The entire displaced mass of water reverses direction and heads back west, toward the ruins of Shimabara. The crossing takes another 30 minutes. The physics creates a 60-minute window of perfect deception. Back in Shimabara, the water had pulled far back from the shore. The bay floor lay exposed in the dark. Wet mud, stranded boats, silence. Survivors of the collapse, bruised, half-death, bleeding, moved toward the waterline. Some searched for family in the rubble near the port. Some walked out onto the seabed because the ruins behind them were burning and the open ground looked safer. They believed the worst was over. 60 minutes after the mountain fell, the ocean came back. The reflected wave hit from the east, from the sea, not the mountain, a direction nobody was watching. It swept across the exposed seabed and into the wreckage of a city already on its knees. The people standing in the shallows, the rescuers carrying survivors toward the castle, the wounded lying in the rubble, the water took them all. 5,000 more dead. Same coast, same night, different direction. Near the castle gate, samurai had been pulling survivors from collapsed houses by torchlight, following screams in the debris. One man they found was a fisherman from Shirado Funatsu, a coastal village that no longer existed. 24 years old, one eye knocked from its socket, a jagged wooden stake driven completely through his shoulder, protruding from both sides. They carried him to the triage area, where a domain surgeon named Shibahara Ritsusai was working with improvised tools. The fisherman asked for a smoke. Then he asked the surgeon to pull the stake out so he could die easier. Several men struggled with it. The wood was splintered, lodged deep in tissue. When they wrenched it free, he made no sound. He thanked everyone around him and died. A samurai named Amano Ginzaemon wrote it all down, in the dark, by torchlight, while the city burned below the castle walls. His chronicle is the only reason any of this survived. 15,000 dead in a single night. The worst volcanic disaster in Japanese history. The shogunate reviewed the maps and classified every death as an act of heaven. No lord punished. No inquiry opened. Japan gave the disaster a name that still lives in the language today. Shimabara Taihen, Higo Meiwaku. Shimabara's catastrophe, Higo's inconvenience. That word, Meiwaku, means a nuisance, a bother. That is the official term for 5,000 bodies on the wrong side of the bay. The people of Higo received no warning before the wave, not a signal, not a messenger, not a fire on the hills. So they became the warning. Survivors hauled heavy stone pillars to the exact points where the water stopped and drove them into the earth. Not memorials, instructions. Build nothing below this line. The stones still stand along the Ariake coast, in Kyotomari, in Umedo, in Otao, and modern tsunami simulations match their placement to the meter. In the 1990s, the same volcanic complex erupted again. Same dome mechanics, same city below. The government recognized the pattern because the stones were still there and the records were still there, and ordered a full evacuation. When the dome collapsed, the city was empty. 43 dead, mostly volcanologists who knew the risk and stayed. 15,000 in 1792, 43 200 years later. The physics never changed, only the memory. Ariake Bay is still 12 miles wide. The stones are still standing. And somewhere above Shimabara, a new dome is still growing. This is Geoclysm.